Good morning. I look like a total train wreck. I just got done running and I'm trying to get to Bold on time. So this is a friendly reminder. Number one, as Gary Vee says, stop worrying about how you look. That is who you are and be who you are. So I'm embracing it today and my hair is a hot mess and it is what it is. But I will say I did get my run in. So this is another friendly reminder. If you're not taking care of health, I would encourage you to get back at it. It is the one thing that will help protect your mindset. So pay attention to what you feed your mind, your body, and your soul. So that's it for that. Hey, I wanted to hit on our new phrase, COTD, class of the day. Today from 10 to noon, it's on the calendar, and everybody should have access to our office calendar. We have chaos to command. So if you are not sure if you're using command to its highest functionality, log into that class. And Evan is a good buddy of mine, and he's the one that runs all the tech training. And y'all, he's getting leads from command. He is running a small team with command. So no excuses, get in there and start learning this stuff because this technology is free. So all that to say is COTD is chaos to command today. If you're not going to Bold, those that are in Bold, how many contacts are you required to make in a 7-day period? It's 100. So if you're not in Bold, you might as well go ahead and get a head start and kickstart for the spring and reach out and make 100 contacts. The easiest way to do that is for you to get on video, talk about what's happening in the marketplace, what you're seeing, highlight a local business, and let the leads come to you. All right, so all things today is shift. We're still talking about creative financing. Want to make sure everybody is aware of all of the creative financing options that we have discussed thus far. So to date, we have talked about permanent buy downs, temporary buy downs, right? We've talked about seller financing checklist. We talked about seller financing. We've talked about contract for deed. We've talked about seller seconds. We've had a lot of discussion around the different creative financing options. And today we're going to talk about lease purchase versus lease options. But I want to start with this quote and then I'll pull my screen up. There's a quote on page 208, and this is by David Reed out of Austin, Texas. David says, assemble a team of mortgage professionals that know every nook and cranny of the mortgage market. I can't tell you how often I found financing for a buyer who had been turned down by a loan officer when all that was needed was a little more effort. If you don't have a second mortgage team and a seasoned mortgage team, you're losing money. So one question I would encourage you to ask different LOs, what is their niche? What problem did they solve? So that you have a list of all of those. So a lot of us are extremely loyal to our mortgage team, but I will say this, and I know Patricia would totally agree with me. Every LO, every mortgage team typically has a niche or a different offering. And just as a friendly reminder, they work with a multitude of agents. And in turn, you should work with a multitude of LOs, right? Because we want to make sure that we're providing all the options for the customer and that they are getting the option that best suits them and their financial situation. So this is a friendly reminder. Instead of just talking to loan officers about, hey, tell me about conventional FHA products, you might want to ask, what is your niche? What are you known for in the mortgage space? That way you can actually write all of that down and have additional options for your customers and the consumer. But today we're going to talk about, let me pull this up, lease options and lease to own. So right here, I just want to go over briefly the difference, and this is pretty easy. But I did pull something out of here that I think is interesting that I'm going to be really curious to know if somebody else has seen this. So it says lease option. It gives you the option to buy the property later, right? So they're not required to purchase it. So if somebody says, hey, I'm going to get an agreement with the owner or the seller for a lease option, what I'm saying is, hey, I want first option. So first right of refusal, right? So the tenant leases the home for a set amount of time. The tenant pays an option fee up front, similar to like an earnest money fee. So they have to submit that up front, and then they have the right to buy the property at a set price before the lease ends. If they choose not to buy, they can walk away. Okay. So that's the lease option. I want to come down here though and talk about pitfalls and what you might see or need to be aware of with a lease option. The tenant may walk away, obviously. The option fee, the buyer may lose it if they choose not to purchase it. Financing risk, the tenant may plan to buy the property, but cannot qualify for the loan, 1 or 3 or 5 years, whatever that term is. And I think this is also something to point out. Maintenance disputes. Contracts for lease options typically shift repair responsibility to the tenant. So make sure that if you're doing this or helping somebody and facilitating this, make sure that you button this section up so that everybody's on the same page on who is responsible for maintenance. All right. And then up here, we've got lease purchase. Lease purchase means the tenant is agreeing up front that they're going to buy the home. Tenant leases the home for a period. Purchase agreement is signed at the beginning of the deal. Price and terms are predetermined, and at the end of the lease, the tenant must buy the property. Some pitfalls for lease purchase: buyer obligation risk. The tenant is legally obligated to buy, even if their financial situation changes. So if they say they're going to buy it based on the agreement, they're going to have to purchase it, or they're going to be in breach of the agreement. Financing problems. If the buyer cannot obtain a mortgage at the end of the lease, they could face legal consequences. Legal complexity, because it's a binding purchase contract, defaults can turn into a legal dispute, and market changes. This is a big one. If property values drop, the buyer is still obligated to buy at the agreed upon price. So these are options. Not saying that this is always going to be the best option, but if you don't know the options, how can you explain to the consumer or the customer what their options are? Those that provide the most options are going to be the ones that make the most money. I think this is really interesting. On page 208, Gary says in here, things to look out for. Document how the sellers set the rent or even pay for a formal rent survey. Make sure all parties are represented by their own attorney. And finally, if prices fall during the term of the agreement, you may run into trouble. Has anyone done a formal rent survey? Is my question. I didn't even know that was a thing. Anyone? Okay, well, that is something to dive into, because again, I didn't even know that that was something that I guess I don't know who's offering that. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into it, but I think that's interesting. One thing I'm learning from this, y'all, I obviously don't know everything. And because I'm a human being and I am going down a growth journey, and I think this is fascinating for creative financing, because this is helping me see things that I didn't even know existed. So all that to say is, this is why this section, just so you know, because this is an in-depth section, is tactic 10, expand the options, creative financing. And the consumer wants options, because you want options, and you are the consumer in different spaces, right? In different industries. And the consumer in the real estate space also wants option. I think somebody raised their hand. Maybe I missed it. All right. Any questions, any thoughts on that? Next week, just a few things to point out. I still want you to come to the calls. I have amazing leaders that are agreeing to run the calls for me next week. I am going on vacation, and I'm going to go refill my cup. So this is a friendly reminder to you all. I was actually talking to another LO this morning, 2 of them, and they're tired, and we're tired. And so please make time for yourself. Gary says to block 4 times throughout the year that you go on vacation. I know when I first started, I couldn't do that. But if you even did a 2-day staycation, this is a friendly reminder that if you don't take care of you, the world's not going to. So you need to make sure you block that in the calendar so that y'all can get a break and recharge. And I'm at the point where I've got to recharge. So thank you to all the leaders who are agreeing to help me out in that. I really appreciate that. But we're going to run with the same cadence next week. All right, y'all. I am off to Bold. Y'all let me know if I can do anything for you tomorrow. We're going to chunk down the vision speech slowly but surely. We're going to start going through those slides so that y'all can start taking that to the market. And what I mean is, what I would love to see is y'all posting that in your social feeds so that people call you and ask you to explain those in detail. So if we want 100 contacts, make it easier, work smarter, not harder. All right, y'all, make it a good one, make it count. Bye, everybody.